Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Rishta Tidro Me Bhava Soto Kayo Me Bhava Supokayo me bawa, anurakto me bawa, sarva siddhi me praya, sarva karma sutta me, sitam shriyam kuruhum. Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samai Ahom Pe Eho Shude Shude Soha Yam Ho Shude Shude Soha Ram Ho Shude Shude Soha Lam Ho Shude Shude Soha Bam Ho Shude Shude Soha Eyam Ram Lam Bam Shude Shude Soha Om Muni Muni Mahamu Shakyamuni Svoha Om Ye Dharma Hetun Prabhava Hetun Teshen Tathagato Yavadata Teshen Chayo Niroda Evam Vadi Mahashramanai Svoha On Chenam Tamche Gyule Jung Egu Deshin Shekpe Sung Gyula Gopa Kaimba Gechon Chembu Teke Sung Gechon Chembu Jingilo Gechon Chembu Ngodru Tol Gechon Chembu Tashi Sho. Sangye chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonamgi rola pinchre sangye druparshu sangye chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonamgi rola pinchre sangye druparshu sangye chedan tsogi chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chis sonamgi drola pinchre sangye druparshu. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. As we were seeing yesterday, one of the fundamental points into Buddhist practice, normally we could divide Buddhist practitioners into two types basically. Traditionally we divide into those that follow Buddhism as a spiritual practice and those that follow Buddhism as a philosophy. And then we have those that only follow the philosophy, those that only follow the spiritual practice, and those that follow both together. So to follow the philosophy, we have what are called the four seals, which is the four basic fundamental philosophical aspects that we need to follow, which would be, we have to see all phenomena that are composed as impermanent, everything that is impure being of the nature of suffering, all phenomena as being free of inherent existence, and recognizing one's own potential to reach enlightenment. That's basically the philosophical part, very briefly. Okay. In order to be a practitioner, spiritually, to follow Buddhism as a spiritual practice, what makes us to be a Buddhist in that sense is taking refuge. That's what makes us actually to become a Buddhist, to enter into it. So refuge becomes a fundamental aspect of Buddhism. It's possible that one person is taking refuge and really doesn't know much about the philosophy and does not really follow it. There is the possibility of someone learning the philosophy, liking it very much, following it, but not taking refuge. And then there's the best possibility, which is both together. Okay, so in that sense, as I was saying before yesterday, we human beings, we are lazy very often. We are very easily, we are able to, how to say, settle down and somehow we adapt very easy to good things, no? We get used very quickly. So when we try to create, we make situations as comfortable as possible, and once we are in a comfortable situation, we won't make that much effort to get out of that. We can even see this very clearly when we go, like, for example, the countries that are more in the tropical part of the world, where you have more heat, so it's more easy to plant food, and life practically, physically, is actually more easy. People have less effort and less dedication very often than in countries where you have much more cold and that life is basically more difficult. So, in a way, it looks strange, but finally it's not. That which are the countries that very often people are more materially more developed? The countries in which the weather condition is more difficult. So if we look, like, for example, the Northern European countries, and then if you go, like, it happens in many places like this. Sure, there is many other aspects together also, but this is an aspect that is there. Like, even when there are conditions where you are able just to fit in and everything is fine, you don't need to put much effort. What happens? You simply adapt to it. We try to create a zone of comfort, and when we create this comfort zone, we somehow settle within it, and we don't make much effort to change something, to do it differently. And especially in our times, we have one rule that we try to follow very well, which is the less effort I make, the better. So it doesn't matter. If I can avoid walking, I would avoid walking. If I can avoid making any effort, I would avoid making any effort. The less effort I put, the better it is. As if making less effort would make us more happy. Okay? But the truth, finally, at least what I believe, is that not making effort in our daily life things, not having to have constantly an effort in our daily life aspect, brings us finally not to be able to put effort in the more how to say, complex aspects of life, like for example, meditation, the spiritual path, changing our habits and behaviors. All of this are things that needs effort to make a change, no? But if we are not used to have constancy and to put effort in the daily things, how can we do that? So that's the example that I had from Tashilumpa Monastery in Tibet, that I was going to my teacher's house to see when I am there, as I go every day to go to my teacher there, which is the abbot of the monastery, Kachen Losang Rinpoche. I go to see him, and then his house in the third, let me see, we have 3 floors and a half, more or less, where his house is. So I would go there. Then very often it happens that when I go in the morning, there is the monks, some young monk, bringing up water for him, because there is no tap water. So he was like this 20 liters of water in the back, going up the stairs of 4 floors. So one day I was asking him, and I said, Gela, how come we don't have water taps here? No, it's so easy. You have down in the ground floor, there is a water tap. Just make a pipe, bring it up. So simple. He said, sure, it's simple. But I said, you have the money to do it. Not him personally, but the monastery do have the resources to do it. The technology is there. Why you don't bring water up here? I said, first of all, because if the young monks that come here don't learn to put effort and constancy in something so basic as such as having water, how would they later have effort and constancy in their meditation and practice? Okay. So, we cannot separate the way how we live our daily life from the way how we practice Dharma. Sometimes we do this division in our mind. Say, okay, I am lazy in my daily life, but in my Dharma, when I will meditate, I will reach enlightenment in 3 months. And I will be the best meditator when I put the best effort, and I will have constancy or whatever. But the truth is that we practice our spiritual path just as we live our daily life. For example, if we do not have gratitude towards the people that help us in our daily life, and towards our parents and everyone else that have done something good to us, it will be very difficult for us to have true gratitude towards our gurus. That's how things are. So, which means the way how we behave in our daily life is directly the same, the way how we behave in our own spiritual path. Sometimes we may make some difference, but actually it's not like that in practice. So, it becomes very important for us few things. One is to keep our commitments, to be able to respect our own commitment. So we need to do that in our daily life so that we can do that also in our spiritual path. So when I make a commitment, I know that I can trust myself. It makes a big difference. It's said in many teachings, keeping purely our commitments is the root of all realizations. We do not keep purely our commitments, we cannot even trust ourselves well. Okay, today I make a commitment, I will do this practice every day. Then after 2 weeks, oh, that's too difficult, I give up. Then we make a commitment, oh, I will always be with you. Then after 2 years, okay, that's too difficult, I'm not going to be with you because you are not as nice as I thought you would be. Then after sometimes, we're always making commitments and after not keeping them in many, many ways. The problem is that by that we are not giving value to our own commitment. It's not a matter with other people also, but most of all with ourselves. So in the Dharma, to keep purely our commitment is extremely important. Because are there moments of difficulty? Sure. But I remember very clear for me, it touched my mind very well, one teaching from Trijang Rinpoche, where he was talking about Trijang Rinpoche's previous Rinpoche's guru, one text on Lojong, and then he was talking about suffering. And he was saying the importance why we should not fear suffering. First of all, the more we fear suffering, the more we suffer. Many of us, we suffer much more from the fear of suffering than from the actual suffering itself. Okay? This is one thing. The other aspect that comes along with it is that in the moment that I fear suffering, I will do many things to avoid that situation. I will do many things to avoid the suffering, but in a more, how to say, practical level. I'm not talking about in the avoiding suffering, the deeper level. I'm talking about, okay, I need to do this, I need to go there, I need to... So we have become very, very busy with all of this. When actually that little thing, first of all, suffering is inevitable somehow. So when we say, okay, there is the suffering, let's deal with it. Let's learn from it. Let's not escape from it. Because every time we escape from suffering, we make suffering stronger and stronger and stronger. And what happened is that, how to say, the point I wanted to reach is that we end up having a sort of a lifestyle, let's call it like that, culture in which we live, in which we, as we said before, we do everything that we can in order to have the less effort as possible. So, I don't know how you say it in English. Portuguese, we say a lei do mínimo esforço, the law of the minimum effort. I don't know how you put it in English, but it means like wherever I can put less effort, the better. Now, everything that I can do more easy without effort, the better. So, then what happens is that one side, we try to put less effort as possible. On the other side, what happens also that we end up how can I say? Being so afraid of suffering itself that we are afraid of putting effort where it's difficult. We are afraid of doing things that bring some difficulty. For example, sitting and meditating. Is it necessarily easy? No. Okay. Making a retreat and waking up early and doing all the sessions and everything else, is it necessarily easier? Is it pleasurable necessarily? At the beginning, not at all. Once we reach a certain level, after a certain threshold, then it becomes very pleasurable, but otherwise it's very difficult. So I never do because it's difficult. What happened is that because of this fear of suffering, whenever we start doing something that it's positive, it's good, when at the first difficulty, we are ready to give up. Because we fear so much that whatever suffering. The same thing happens, for example, in relation. We have a new job, we go to a new place where to live, we have a new relationship, it doesn't matter. Sooner or later there will be some difficulty. This is normal. But if I live in this very naive idea that I can have a relationship or a job or a place where I live or anything that will have no problem at all, the first moment that I get to a problem, I don't want problems, I don't want suffering, so I stop the relationship, I try to live in somewhere else, I want to change my job, I want to change things. So, and then what happened? We escape from the difficulties, and by that we don't learn with it. And we end up never being able to settle down and to overcome things. So, in this way, it's important not to fear so much suffering. It's given the example that when a warrior goes to war, he's wearing his armor. Why is he wearing an armor? Because he knows he's going to get hit. Otherwise, why to wear an armor? So he knows already that a sword is going to catch him, that he's going to get hit, and he knows that. That's why he wears an armor. Okay? And that's not a problem. You say, okay, there will be difficulties, yes. There will be pain, yes. But this is not a reason for me to stop. I have no fear of it. That's not a reason for me to avoid my path, to stop the path that I'm going through. So, in our own process, of our own life, there are difficulties. There are moments which are not easy. There is, in our own process of our spiritual path, it's not always easy to have to give continuity, especially, as we were saying before, it's not easy to get out from our own, how do you say, comfortable little sofa in samsara. We're a little couch, we sit in a little nice couch, looking at a nice movie. Then we don't want to stand up again. The world is falling apart, but we are there comfortable. Somehow what I want to say is we enter in our comfort zone and I don't want to get out of it. Okay? Which, in a way, is okay. Do whatever you like to do. Everyone is free. But the problem is that if I keep staying on that way, it will bring, in the present and in the future, many negative side effects. And finally, it will bring negative effect, the whole effect, which is sooner or later the conditions will change. I would not have developed my own stability. And then there will be more suffering. So, when we were talking yesterday about recognizing the lower realms of rebirth and so on, the point is that to take refuge, it means I need to ask for help. So I need to be able to go out of this comfort zone and say, okay, I must change my own behavior. I must be able to go beyond anger and jealousy and pride and miserliness. And I want to develop wisdom perfectly. I want to develop love and compassion and I want to develop generosity and humility and stability. I want to develop real true joy within myself, true satisfaction. And in order to do that, I really need help. So that's when we say, I take refuge. So taking refuge is like the essence, it's like the first part of our path. Because it is the moment when we say, I really want to do something. It's not okay for me to be as I am here. I need to change. I need to develop my qualities. And one important thing here is when we say I need to change, we should not have this thought through the perspective that we have very often of guilt. I am a bad person, I need to change. No. I am just one sentient being in samsara, that's all. But I want to get out. So I need to change. Or I do something myself, or I will continue to experience what I am already used to. The point is the following. Or I do something myself to make things different, or they will continue the same with different shapes, different colors, different names. They can get a little bit better, they can get worse, but more or less there we are. If I want something different, I must put the effort to have it. And so, taking refuge is not a matter of making a Buddhist ceremony. It's a matter of deep within ourselves, asking for help because we want to get out of our own inner cycle of suffering. We want to develop our own qualities. And we need to understand that when we talk about the inner cycle of suffering, this we saw maybe last week. When we talk about the inner cycle of suffering, it doesn't mean I am sad and I have this suffering or that suffering. This is just superficial suffering. We have the deepest level of suffering, which is the all-pervasive suffering, which is our own mind and body polluted by our own mental defilements and karma. Anyhow, the point is to recognize deeply our own state and say, I want to be happy, I want to live constantly in peace, I want to assure for myself and others a state of joy and satisfaction. And even if we're not talking about next lives, even about only this life, I want to be happy. So if for me to be happy, what do I need to do? I need to develop my qualities. Like we can see so clear, especially when we have big difficulties, the state of mind is what makes the big difference. It's not external condition. We can have the most difficult external condition. If our state of mind is good, we are fine. Even one time I was talking to a doctor, he was explaining me that scientifically speaking, our body would have the ability to cure any sickness. Cure any sickness by itself. The only thing we need in order to be able to cure any sickness is a state of great joy and satisfaction. If we are able to keep for a long period, in a stable way, a state of peace, of happiness, of satisfaction, this automatically have an impact in our mind, in our body so strong that our whole immune system gets stronger and so on, and we can cure any sickness actually. Okay? So this is just one example of how is the power of the mind. So the mind is really something that we really need to take care. So I don't know how to do it by myself, so please Buddha, show me how to do. You did it, so please show to me. But you cannot do it for myself, so I need a Dharma. And I need help while I'm doing it. So there is a spiritual company of the spiritual family, the Sangha, that will help me on this path. Okay? So refuge is something that should be deep within ourselves, and it's something really, really important, special, beautiful. And we have the part where we recite refuge, but the true refuge is coming within ourselves. And that's when we really say, I am following a path sincerely. I must do something about it here. And I'm asking for help. Why? Because just by myself, I'm not able to do it. Okay? And this asking for help doesn't mean someone please do for me. It means I am blind out of my ignorance. So please help me to see. Show me the path. Be by my side. That's what we request. Okay? So we go back to the text. I will just make in English one example that I said in Italian that I didn't say before, which is that when we talk about the fact of not fearing suffering, it's like if I need to have a small suffering, if I need to go through a small suffering that will avoid a bigger suffering later, it's welcome. No? Like, for example, when we talk like in medicine, and I was seeing this very clear in Tibetan medicine. One time I was in Tibet, I was having classes of Tibetan medicine, and I went one day to the clinic to look at the doctor doing moksha and some treatments at some patients, and there came one old Tibetan lady, and she had her main problem was that she had very strong insomnia and anxiety. Too many thoughts, she was not able to sleep at all. So she was having this problem for quite a long time. So the doctor checked her, looked at her pulse and so on, and he saw very clear she had a very big problem of lung, of wind disorder. So he said, okay, what she needs to do, there is a treatment, but she also needs to do moksha, and one other technique, which is they take like a sort of a hook made of bronze, silver, or gold, and then it goes like, they put it on fire until it becomes red hot, and then they choose a specific points in the head, and then go like, shh. And then what happens is that the place where they burn, hair will not grow anymore. So it remains this little round thing. And like this lady, they did, if I remember, they did it the center and then another 4 points, so totally 5 points on her head. And then took the moksha and did the moksha on the heart and on the back. But when we do the moksha here in the West, what happens is that you just do it when it starts to get hot, take it away. There, no, what they do is that they put and they start blowing on it until it completely burns the whole thing, and then it remains burned on the skin, quite deep burn actually. And then I asked, wouldn't it get an infection or some pus or something? They said, yes, possible, sure. But he said, but you can be sure now, at least for some other 5 years, she would sleep very well. No more problem of insomnia. So Is it painful to do the moksha like this? Sure. Who cares? The important thing is to stop the problem. What is better? What is worse? Not to sleep or to have some pain for 10 minutes? Not to sleep is much worse. Okay? And then we say, some people may say, oh, but this medicine, this oriental medicine is too hard and too much suffering. That's not possible to go like this. That's a violent medicine. Then when you look for chemotherapy, for example, just to make one strong example, but there are many others that we could go through. Just take any medicine and you look at side effects. Okay? What's the problem of a side effect of having some burning on the skin, As long as it works. Wonderful. Okay, no more hair growing on the head at some point. What? I can sleep well. Okay? So the point is that sometimes if we are able to, what they say is that this technique for the head, they do normally for more old people. Young people, they don't like so much. No? But what happens is that if I need to go through a momentary suffering that will avoid a long-term suffering, welcome. But having so much fear of suffering very often, we don't want to avoid any suffering at any moment. And by that, finally, we suffer more. Okay? But now let's go back to the text. So, question number 23. Yila gomdo kuncho sumbo chitra chik yingor che rangre namgi gonge yultu nangwe kuncho ki ten sum dinam le matokpa shik yila chetam dinam ka cheba yin. Thade kusum tukte nams kuncho sumbo ngon ming kyang dinam la ten kuncho sum drempe yultu gyurwa dang. 타체 뜸바 촉태이 되규 갸츠르 군초기 댄숨 싱스 셴발라 구라 꾸르틱 체바이 군초 숨보 응니라 차와 체버 숨베 치르 촉숨 응어터 그발라. No, yesterday we did 21 and then we did a 22, but we didn't do the second part of the 22 actually. Okay? So, no, we have gone already to the 22. This first part, we just need to go to the second verse of 22, which is, let me just 1 second, answer 22. Kyabyo Lama kuncho sum yingor gomse lamrengi sokshin kapgi mengagi shashe shingshi gube sul. Because when taking refuge, we can do visualization, okay? So here we are, page 30. The object of refuge is of three, the Guru and the three jewels. Kyabyul Lama Kunchuksum. Yeah, this is the translation, it's a little bit funny. The object of refuge is of three, the Guru and the three jewels. Here we say, this tree is a bit strange because in Tibetan we have Kyabyul Lama Kunchuksum. The object of refuge is the Guru and the three jewels. This tree here is a little bit extra, okay? The object of refuge is the Guru and the three jewels. When meditating in the perspective of one's own mind, one can include the entire merit field of the gradual path to enlightenment and make requests to them according to individual instruction, the specific instruction, which means, like when we do the Guru Puja, we have the whole merit field. When we do the Guru Yoga of Lama Tsongkhapa, when we do self-healing, that you have Guru Buddha with the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, all of this can be a merit field for taking refuge. So for example, when we do self-healing and we start with Oma Guru Buddha Siddhi Hum, it also means taking refuge at that moment. So we visualize Guru Buddha in front of us, 5 chakras, light and nectar, and so on. So this is all part of where to meditate on the Guru Buddha when taking refuge. Okay? So here it will depend on every specific instruction that we will follow, which means it depends on the practice that we will do. Normally we visualize Guru Buddha in front of us. It can be done in many, many, many different ways. The important thing is the inner attitude of taking refuge more than the actual visualization itself. Okay? Then, question 23 goes in the same direction as it goes through. Yila gomtu kuncho sumbu chitra chik yungur che. Rangre namgi gonge yultu nawa kuncho ki ten sum dinamle ma tokpa shik yila chetam. Dinam ka cheba yin. Dinam ka cheba yin. Tade kusun tutemla kuncho sumbu ngoy min kyang dinam la den kuncho sum rembe yultu gyurwa dang tache tenpa chote yi degyu gyatso kuncho gi ten sum shen sul shenba la gu la kurti cheba yi kuncho sumbu ngoy ni la chawa chebar sumbe chir kuncho sum tar gu la. When the refuge subject or the refuge object is meditated upon mentally, when the object of refuge is meditated upon mentally, Kyabyul means the object of refuge, which means where we take refuge, in the Guru, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. How are the 3 jewels perceived in the perspective of his or her mind? How are you supposed to imagine and to see? How are you supposed to enter in contact with the 3 jewels when meditating upon it through your mind? When meditating on the 3 jewels, does our mind reflect only on the 3 objects representing the 3 jewels which appear to our consciousness of the 5 sensories doors, or something else separate? Which means, when meditating on the 3 jewels, does our mind reflect only on the external representation of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or there is something else? Then the answer goes by Panchen Rinpoche. The supporting image of body, speech, and mind of a holy being that we have now are not really the 3 jewels, but they are the objects for us to recall the 3 jewels. Which means the supporting images means everything like we have around here. Okay? All the low holy images, the statues, the painting, the texts, and all of this. Okay? All these images, they are not the actual 3 jewels. So when I go and I make prostrations and I go and I ask the blessings on a statue, sure, there is the whole part of Ramne and inviting the wisdom beings to be inseparable from the commitment being, and this whole part of being blessed object. But they are here to represent Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This is the most, so as said, the supporting image of body, speech, and mind. Okay. Normally the body is represented by the image of a Buddha or a deity, the speech represented by the holy texts, and the mind represented by a stupa or by Vajra and bell. That we have now are not really, which means the objects of our altar, are not really the 3 jewels, but they are not real Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but they are the objects for us to recall the 3 jewels. Okay, to remember about Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The supreme guide, which means Buddha Shakyamuni, together with the deities, said, in the ocean of Sutra and Tantra that venerating respectfully the supporting images of the 3 jewels that are made in the appropriate manner is the same as venerating the 3 real jewels. Therefore, I would respect them as real 3 jewels. Which means, when I pay respect to the representation of Buddha, I am paying respect to Buddha. Okay. That's why when we have an image of Buddha and when we pay respect to it, the important thing is not like, okay, a golden statue of Buddha. and a wooden statue of Buddha, which one is more precious spiritually? For our practice, which one we should give more respect? To the image of Buddha made out of gold and diamonds, or to the one made out of clay? The same, exactly. There is no difference whatsoever. I do not pay respect before because it is something that, how to say, it is precious from the point of view of material things. Precious because Buddha is guiding me on the path to enlightenment, and is representing what is most precious, which is my own potential to enlightenment also. That's why I respect the image of Buddha. No? This makes me remember one time I was in Tibet, and then there were some monks, they were making a stupa. And then they were telling the story that when the 10th Panchen Lama was making a stupa, one of the monks, because there is a tradition when making a stupa to put many precious objects inside, like precious stones and diamonds and gold and precious things, and put it on the stupa. So, which comes from a way of respecting and the holy object that is there. But at that time, this monk, he came very sad to the Panchen and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have so many precious objects to put on the stupa," and so on. And then the 10th Panchen Lama, quite hard on him, and said, "What? You have the relics of the bodies of all the Panchen Lamas, and you have nothing precious enough to put in there?" You know? And then, so he was always saying, we do not give so much effort like for gold and silver, and this is not what we need to pay respect to, no? So at that time I was talking to them because I was thinking, okay, if what we need, because there are some, them say, oh, we need to, in order for it to be precious, we need to put a lot of gold and many precious objects. If this is what makes something precious that we need to pay respect to, let's go making prostrations to the Swiss banks, no? We go in front of the bank, we make prostrations there because it's so precious. Look how much precious things are in there, okay? So, what happened is that it's the point when we talk about an image is precious. Like we go to a stupa and then there's this idea, oh, so much gold, so much this, oh, how precious it is. If it's precious because of the gold, then I go to make prostrations to a bank where it's full of gold in there. Okay? Why I make prostrations? Because it's representing my own potential of enlightenment. Because it's representing the enlightened mind, it's representing the path to enlightenment. What is most precious than anything else. That's why I make prostrations. That's why I pay respect. And when I make a holy image out of gold, it's because I offer the best that I can to represent what is so precious for me. Not because it makes it more precious. So, the representations of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which is the representations of body, speech, and mind, the holy body, speech, and mind. No? And then, as we have all the images of the Buddhas, our gurus, the holy texts, they are here to represent what? Whenever I have an image of Buddha in front of me, it's representing not only the one that is showing me the path and the actual path to follow and the spiritual company during the path, it is also showing my own potential of enlightenment. And this is the most precious thing that we have, these two together. That's why we pay respect to it. That's why it doesn't matter. It can be a little image of Buddha. Maybe the artist was not so good. But still, it has the same value as any other golden image with the best artist, done by the best artist. And then we have one little that's not done now nicely. But it has the same value from the spiritual point of view. No difference whatsoever. So, this is an important point for us because otherwise it looks like we are venerating a piece of stone. And has nothing to do with that. When I look at, like here, at my right, I have Buddha Amoghasiddhi. It's showing my potential of enlightenment. It's showing to me that I can generate the all-realizing wisdom, the power of realization, going beyond fear, eliminating jealousy and envy. I can do that. I have this potential within myself. That's what it's showing to me. And that's what I respect. It's qualities that I want, I venerate. What I venerate is a state of realization, a state of stability, a state of joy, so on. What I venerate is what the statue represents and not the piece of stone by itself. Okay? So, this is important for us to have clear. But in the moment that it represents, it is sacred also. The image that represents the Buddha, it's also sacred. It's not because, oh, that's just a representation, I don't care. No. In the moment that I do not respect what represents the Buddha, I'm lacking respect to the Buddha also. In the moment that I do not respect what is representing my own spiritual path, I'm lacking respect to my own spiritual path. That's why we take the holy text and we keep it with respect. Not because this is just paper and ink, who cares? But finally, it's showing me the path to enlightenment, and I respect my own path. That's why I treat it with respect and care. Anything that representing my path, I treat it with respect. Anything that represents what is holy for me, I treat it with respect. Because by treating the external with respect, I cultivate the internal. Okay. Next question. 24. Tangbo yina kandra shik yila gom. Te gompe dinam la muku chungdu masonra chetsu chidrayo. Niba yina kuncho sumbo ngö te rang kang yin. Lume kuncho sumbo ngö. Drupte wangi natsa kyang. Tubwang gini ku sumdang. Nyange dedang kang sagye. Chedan jetsum ma pambe. Gyunre kunzop tendamdang. Nekab tartu kyab namgi. Kebar gyular sumba shing. Kemdrongowo iti wa kangla ches. Kemdrongowo iti wa kangla che. Dinam la kowa manyebar. Kyapsu drowa kelembani. Rekse minube medan tsungsos. Kemdrongowo iti wa Daniel hakpar jikpadang kuncho kyobe nuden tu. Shele jungwe kyamdrola. Tamche kemba kyoni she. Dite kowa manye par kyamdro washe kelempa rekche minu medan sung shebe kate tendan den. Okay, we go 24 and 25. So question 24. It's a very simple question. If it does as the first option, reflecting only on the three representations, upon what should one meditate mentally? When meditating on them, how could one's devotion to them, to the three jewels, not lessen? If it does as the second option, what are the actual three jewels? So here we go with the answer. The real non-deceptive three jewels could be different due to different schools. However, the Almighty Lord said, the three kayas, nirvana, and the 8 spiritual persons are the real non-deceptive three jewels. Venerable Ajita Maitri asserts the difference between the casual refuge and the resultant refuge, conventional refuge and ultimate refuge, as well as temporary refuge and absolute refuge, as taught in Uttara Tantra. I thought this would go a little bit quickly, but it's not that simple. Okay. First of all, what is the true refuge? Because if the images are a representation, when we take refuge, in what are we actually taking refuge? So here, the definition of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha can be a little bit different according to the different philosophical schools of Buddhism. Okay? So Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, it will change a little bit. What are the actual, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha definition? Actually, there is a book that we are about to print. I was working on it a little bit today and yesterday night, and I think by the end of this month we should have it printed. and if not sure, for the next month we will be there, which is the book of all the part of Sutra, which was written by Panchen Rinpoche's previous life. And inside this book is like 600 something pages. Actually, it's half, because half of the book is in Tibetan, so half. But one of the subjects of the book, one of the texts inside, is how to take refuge. And there it goes on details about the qualities of Buddha according to Hinayana, the qualities of Buddha according to Mahayana, the qualities of Buddha according to Vajrayana, and there is like entering into details about the all aspects of refuge. Okay? So I hope you will get the book so that you can read it and understand better about that. Okay? But the point here is that, however, Buddha said, the three bodies, nirvana, and the 8 spiritual persons are the real non-deceptive 3 jewels. So what does that mean? The 3 kayas, which are Rupa Kaya, Dharma Kaya, and we have no Rupa Kaya, it's divided into 2. So we have the Dharma Kaya, Sambhoga Kaya, and the Nirmana Kaya. Okay? The Dharma Kaya is the subtle. Actually, the best description that I ever found is that the Dharma Kaya is the very subtle body and mind, mostly the very subtle mind of a Buddha. The Sambhoga Kaya is which is called the emanation body, is the subtle body and mind of a Buddha. And the Nirmana Kaya is the emanation body, which is the gross body and mind of a Buddha. Like every one of us, at this moment, we have very, very subtle and gross body, speech, and mind. The same thing is for a Buddha. The very subtle mind, when enlightened, becomes Dharmakaya. The subtle mind becomes Sambhogakaya. The gross becomes Nirmanakaya, body and mind together. Okay? The Nirvana, the purest, the Nirvana is the state of no suffering, the state free from ignorance. That's the Dharma. That's the state of mind that we need to develop. That's the objective. That's the ultimate Dharma. The ultimate Dharma is the state free from ignorance. Okay? And then when we call here the 8 spiritual beings, the 8 spiritual person, it's like a way how to divide the practitioners before reaching enlightenment. Okay? So we have Hinayana, Mahayana, can have different levels of spiritual development, starting from renunciation up to just before reaching enlightenment. Okay? So then here there is even one text which we discuss for hours, days actually, all the different types of sanghas and the different types of spiritual developments and so on. The point is that the Buddha is the one showing us what we can develop, our own potential. The Dharma is showing us the path that we can develop it. The Sangha is showing us that we can really do it because someone else that was the same situation as us is already doing it. So we go together with these 3. Okay? So the representation is something external. The real 3 jewels is the body, speech, and mind in a pure state, the process of developing one's own qualities of the mind itself. Let's say the body Buddha is representing like the body, which means the external appearance. That now here we have a very subtle, and gross. So this in a pure state is the Buddha. The mind in a pure state is the Dharma, and the process to develop it is also called the Dharma. And the Sangha is the practitioners that are on the same path as us, being our company during that path, showing us that it's possible to realize that path. Okay? And the Guru is the embodiment of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for us. So, then we have the difference between the refuge of cause and the refuge of result. The refuge of cause is when I say, I take refuge in the Buddha, that shows me the path. I take refuge in the Dharma, the path to follow. I take refuge in the Sangha, the spiritual company during my path. The resultant refuge is, I take refuge in the Buddha that one day I will become. My own potential of enlightenment. I take refuge in the pure state of mind of the Dharma that one day I will develop. I take refuge in the perfect spiritual company that one day I will become. So that's the refuge of result. Okay, I bring the result into the path. I take refuge in my own potential, actually. Okay. Normally, in the Hinayana refuge, we take refuge of the cause, and in the Mahayana refuge, we take refuge of result. Then after here, we have conventional refuge and absolute ultimate refuge. Let me just take here. First we go temporary refuge is just when we take refuge in order to get out of the sufferings of this life and next life. And then when we talk about absolute refuge, it means taking refuge in order to reach enlightenment, to get completely out of samsara. Okay. Then conventional refuge and ultimate refuge. Conventional refuge is taking refuge in the teachings of Buddha and in the appearance and so on. And ultimate refuge it's normally what we call refuge. And ultimate refuge is taking refuge in the true, pure nature of all phenomena. Is somehow taking refuge in the lack of inherent existence, in the ultimate nature of reality. Because it's only due to the ultimate nature of reality that it's possible for us to reach Buddhahood. It's like taking refuge in emptiness. It's like, I can reach Buddhahood. I can follow this path. Why? Because my mind is interdependent. Because it lacks inherent existence. So I take refuge in it. Okay? So, this is very quickly going through these points here. What would be considered the real entity of refuge? What would be a real refuge? Okay? Like, what would be the real essence of refuge? Accepting that one takes refuge in them without gaining a good understanding of these preceding points is like a fire which cannot burn or cook. Which means, if I just take refuge, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha without understanding the points that we have just said before, it's like making fire that is not able to burn or to cook. So it's useless. And here Panchen Rinpoche answers, the real entity, the real nature of refuge is a refuge of knowing that oneself has great fear and knowing that the three jewels have the power to protect from it, as the omniscient you yourself accept. The entity, the true nature of refuge is wanting to get out of suffering and knowing that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha can take us out of suffering, basically. So, when it says here, knowing that oneself has great fear, which means fear of what? Fear of suffering, wanting to avoid suffering. I don't want to stay in samsara. I fear samsara, and I also fear just getting out of samsara for my own benefit. I must help all sentient beings. So, this is one part, and the other part is what we call faith, which is believing that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are able to eliminate our suffering. So, considering oneself to have taken refuge without having gained such understanding, I have taken refuge, but without having the determination to get out of suffering, or to avoid just getting out of suffering for one's own benefit, which will be the Mahayana refuge, and without having actual faith and understanding of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is similar to a fire which is not able to burn or boil. Making such a statement has some significance. Which means, if I just go, Namo Gurubhya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Triratnaya, and I can take refuge in so much. But if I really don't want to get out of samsara, if I really don't want to get out of suffering, there is not something from which I take refuge, and I have not clarity where I take refuge, what is Buddha, what is Dharma, what is Sangha, it's like making fire that is not able to burn. Like not getting to the point. We are missing the actual point. Okay, I think it's quite clear, right? So I just wanted to conclude this part because question 26 will start now a next part, which we will see tomorrow, which is 26 and 27. We have tomorrow, the day after next, 3 days. I think we will take these 3 days to see these two questions, which is about karma. We enter the whole part of understanding better how karma functions and so on. Okay? So, Tomorrow, most probably, we'll go directly to the next question. I was just thinking there's so much more to say about refuge, actually. We could stay days and days talking about it, but maybe we just go to some little definitions and details tomorrow, and maybe I bring one book which I like, which has some nice definitions about it. And because the next question, 26 and 27, is regarding the law of karma, which is a very interesting subject and very extensive also. And my idea was that tomorrow is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We have another 4 days. In these 4 days, my idea would be to conclude up to the end of question 27, because from question 28 onwards, it starts the part of the text which regards concentration, meditative concentration, and wisdom, which is the most difficult part of the text, actually. So, if we could finish up to that part, at least we finish an important chapter, let's say, of the book itself. Okay? So I think this is all for today. The important thing for us to remember when we talk about taking refuge is really understanding that it's not just the ceremony of taking refuge or of the recitation. All of this is important, but it's deeply recognizing I want to get out of suffering, not the normal suffering, but the suffering of change, the all-pervasive suffering, going to a more deep level, which means I want to be constantly in a state of joy, of satisfaction, of peace. And in order to do that, I need help. Because just by myself, I don't know what to do. So I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, I take refuge in the Guru. That is the embodiment of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay? So this is all for today. So we do now the final dedications. Gyaltsen Lama kutse rapten chi namkar trile cholchur gepadang Losang tempe dröme sassumgi Drove Michel tatu ne gyurchi Nimo dele tsendele nime koyan delekshin Nyinsen takto delekpe Koncho sumke jingelo Koncho sumke ngodrupso Koncho sumke trashishon. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and spring out the path of our lives with various signs of auspicious.